The words hung in the air, colder and sharper than the December frost clinging to the window panes. "You're not welcome at Christmas, Liam." We all agreed. My mother-in-law, Carol, delivered the line with the casual cruelty of a queen banishing a court jester. She stood in the foyer of the house I paid for, a smug little smile playing on her lips. My wife, Sarah, stood slightly behind her, her gaze fixed on a loose thread on the carpet, refusing to meet my eyes. Her brother, Mark, a perpetual student whose tuition I also paid, just shrugged from his position on the couch, his face buried in his phone. "What?" I managed to stammer, the grocery bags I was holding suddenly feeling like they weighed 1,000 pounds. "What are you talking about? It's Christmas." "It's a family-only affair this year," Carol said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "We just think it would be better for everyone, less stress." Stress? I was the one working 60-hour weeks at a high-pressure finance job to fund their comfortable, stress-free lives. I paid the mortgage on this sprawling 4-bedroom house. I paid for the European SUV Sarah drove. I paid for Mark's seemingly endless pursuit of a degree he had no passion for. I paid for Carol's weekly spa days and her pension for expensive organic groceries. I wasn't just part of the family, I was its entire financial infrastructure, and I was being uninvited from Christmas in my own home? I looked at Sarah, my wife of 8 years, the woman I had fallen in love with for her vibrant laugh and kind heart. That woman was gone, replaced by this stranger who couldn't even look at me. "Sarah, what is this?" She finally looked up, her expression a careful mask of indifference. "Mom's right, Liam. It's just complicated right now. We need some space." "Space?" My voice rose, a mixture of disbelief and anger. "We live together. You want space at Christmas? What have I done?" "It's not about what you've done," Mark chimed in, not even bothering to look up from his phone. "It's just the vibe, man. You're killing the vibe." I felt a surge of pure rage. The vibe. I was killing the vibe while funding their entire existence. I dropped the grocery bags on the floor, a carton of eggs cracked, yellow yolk seeping onto the pristine hardwood. No one moved to clean it up. It was my mess in my house, a perfect metaphor for the situation. I stared at the three of them, a united front of ungrateful, cold-hearted vipers. My own wife was part of it. The betrayal was a physical ache in my chest. "Fine," I said, my voice dangerously low, "if that's how you want it." I turned and walked out, slamming the door behind me. The cold air hit me, a welcome shock to my system. I sat in my car, the engine off, just breathing. My mind raced, trying to piece it all together. This wasn't sudden. It was the culmination of months of strange behavior. Sarah had been distant, always on her phone, smiling at texts she would quickly hide if I walked into the room.
She'd been having more and more girls' nights out, coming home late, smelling of a cologne that wasn't mine. The late-night work meetings that I never questioned. I had chalked it up to stress, giving her the benefit of the doubt, believing in the woman I married. I had been a fool, a blind, trusting fool. That night, I didn't go to a hotel. I went to my office, a place of cold logic and hard facts. If my life was falling apart, I needed to understand the foundation it was built on. I started digging, not out of malice, but out of a desperate need for the truth. I was paying for everything, so I had access to everything. Phone bills, credit card statements, bank records. It was a digital breadcrumb trail, and I followed it with a growing sense of dread. The phone bill was the first domino to fall. There was one number, called and texted dozens of times a day, especially during the hours she was supposedly at work or with her friends. A quick search of the number brought up a name, Julian Vance. Another search brought up his profile. He was a real estate mogul, older, silver-haired, with a predatory smile and a portfolio of high-end properties. He was everything I wasn't, established, independently wealthy, and oozing a kind of smug confidence that made my skin crawl. Then came the credit card statements, dinners at restaurants I couldn't afford to take her to anymore, weekend trips to boutique hotels in nearby cities that she told me were work retreats. The charges painted a vivid, sickening picture of a double life. My money wasn't just funding her family, it was funding her affair. They weren't just pushing me away, they were making room for my replacement. The phrase "we all agreed" echoed in my head, but now it had a new, sinister meaning. They hadn't just agreed to uninvite me from Christmas, they had agreed to a plan. Carol and Mark knew. They had to. Their sudden coldness, their united front, it all made sense. They were vetting the new money source before discarding the old one.
They saw Julian Vance with his old money and flashy lifestyle as an upgrade. I was just a stepping stone they were now ready to kick away. My grief quickly curdled into a cold, hard resolve. They saw me as a transaction, a simple financial instrument. Fine. It was time to show them what happens when the ATM runs out of cash. I spent the next 2 days in a blur of phone calls. The first was to my lawyer. I explained the situation, the infidelity, the financial entanglement. He was methodical, his questions sharp and precise. When I mentioned the house, a crucial detail came to light, a detail I had almost forgotten. When we bought the house, Sarah's credit was a mess. The mortgage and the deed were solely in my name. We had always intended to add her to it later, but later never came. Legally, she was a resident, not an owner. She and her family were living in my house, on my dime, while plotting to replace me.
My next calls were to the bank, the credit card companies, and the university bursar's office. With a few clicks and verbal confirmations, the river of money that flowed from my accounts into their lives was dammed. The joint account was frozen. The credit cards I paid for were canceled. The automatic payment for Mark's spring semester tuition was terminated. I felt a grim satisfaction with each action. It wasn't just revenge, it was survival. It was severing a limb to save the body. The final piece of my plan was the most difficult, but the most necessary. I contacted a realtor and listed the house for sale. I wanted them out. Not next month, not next week. Now. Christmas Eve arrived. I knew they would be celebrating, likely with Julian as the guest of honor. The thought of him in my house, drinking my wine, sitting on my couch with my wife, was a fire in my gut. I drove to the house, a stack of official-looking documents on the passenger seat. The lights were on, the sound of laughter and Christmas music spilling out into the cold night. I didn't knock. I used my key. The music stopped the moment I stepped into the foyer. They were all there. Carol, Mark, Sarah, and him, Julian Vance. He had his arm draped casually around Sarah's shoulders. They were all holding glasses of champagne, a half-carved turkey sitting on the dining table. They looked like the perfect family. My perfect family, stolen and repurposed. They stared at me, their faces a mixture of shock and anger. "Liam, what are you doing here?" Carol screeched, her face contorting with rage. "I told you you are not welcome." "This is my house, Carol," I said, my voice calm and steady, betraying none of the turmoil inside me. "I'm always welcome here, but I'm afraid I can't say the same for you all anymore." I walked over to the dining table and placed the papers down. An eviction notice, legally drafted and effective immediately. A copy of the deed to the house, with my name and only my name clearly printed on it. And finally, the canceled credit cards, which I fanned out like a poker hand. "What is this?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling as she looked at the papers. "That," I said, looking directly at her, letting her see the full depth of my pain and my resolve, "is the end of the line. The free ride is over." I turned my gaze to Julian. "I hope you're ready to pick up the tab, Julian, because as of 5 minutes ago, Sarah is unemployed, homeless, and has about $27 to her name." Sarah gasped. "You can't do this." "I can, and I have," I replied. "You and your family made a decision. You all agreed that I wasn't good enough. You saw a better offer and decided to trade up. You treated me like a business deal gone bad. So I've decided to treat this like a hostile takeover. I'm liquidating my assets, and that starts with this house." Mark finally spoke, his voice a pathetic whine. "What about my tuition? It's due next week."
"You should have thought about that before you decided my vibe was off," I said, my voice laced with ice. "Maybe Julian can help you out, or you could try getting a job." The color drained from Carol's face as the reality of the situation crashed down upon her. The spa days, the groceries, the very roof over her head, all gone. Julian looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight. This wasn't the cozy, pre-packaged family life he'd signed up for. He was a predator, not a savior. I looked at Sarah one last time. The woman I had loved was truly gone. Her eyes filled not with remorse, but with the panicked fury of a cornered animal. There was no apology, no regret, only the selfish terror of having her comfortable world dismantled. "You have 48 hours to vacate the premises," I said, my voice leaving no room for argument.
The realtor will be here on the 26th to change the locks and begin showing the property. Anything you leave behind will be considered a donation." I turned and walked towards the door, the silence in the room deafening. I didn't look back. As I stepped out into the cold, clean air, the first snowflakes of Christmas began to fall. For the first time in years, I wasn't stressed. I was free. I had lost a family, but I had reclaimed my life, and that was the best Christmas gift I could have ever given myself.